Schmoes Know presents HorrorFlix, a podcast covering all things horror, suspense, and psychological thrillers in the world of cinema. And now, here are your hosts, Cobbster and Cody.
Hey, Cobbster, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Are you trying to scare me?
I was trying to.
You
You
can't
got me
do it.
last week.
I got you last week, but you're not going to get me this week.
I'll just one day.
Well, no, you won't, because I can never be scared. The only thing that does scare me is spiders. Unless you bring a spider in, then that's when you can scare me. Other than that,
in the works.
no.
It's all good.
Anyways, what's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of the HorrorFlix podcast. I'm Cobbster.
I'm Cody. We're at episode 3, man.
Yo, episode 3. We keep trucking along.
We are still doing this.
We're still
It's
making
great.
We're just doing low budgets, and we're still making more and more money, just like every other
just
horror
like
film out there.
House. Here
There
we go.
it is.
Anyway.
So today we're joined by a lovely guest. You
Hi.
guys know her from AMCI, AMC Movie Talk,
Yep.
Profiles,
Yep.
Fandango, Australia.
Yeah.
She's
How
literally
old are you?
everywhere. She is the indie and classic queen, Alicia Malone. Hi, Alicia.
Hi, never come to Australia if you're scared of spiders.
Oh, there's like camel spiders or
They're terrifying spiders. I think
Oh.
most of the most poisonous spiders in the world live in Australia.
Why has there not been a horror movie about Australian
There
spiders?
should
something?
be.
Aussie,
Loads up final draft right now.
Aussie tarantulas. That's,
Yeah.
that's going to be like
That's
a
why it's not
Sharknado
been made,
produced
'cause
thing.
titles like
Spiders
that.
and snakes but Wolf Creek we have.
Yes.
We'll get into that
Yeah.
later.
Okay. I'm already excited. And
scared.
I got some things to say about Australian horror films too.
Cool.
So basically, guys, today, since Alicia is here, you may think like, oh, she's not the biggest horror fan. You would think we'd get someone who's very enthusiastic about horror films.
Yeah.
But a couple weeks ago was Sundance, and then just last week was South by Southwest. There were some good horror films that premiered there, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're just going to talk about indie films and the future of horror in general. So, Alicia, let's start off. Let's say, one of your favorite horror films of all time?
Favorite horror film of all time is The Shining.
Oh,
So I was
good.
gonna guess Psycho, but I'll
Yes.
go with
Oh,
Psycho.
yes.
Oh, because, yeah, one of his
Or
favorites
mine
is
is-
Psycho.
I was about to give you a high five. I'm gonna take it back.
No,
Yeah,
take it back.
Psycho comes a close second because
Okay.
I love my Hitchcock, as you know, but I also love Stanley Kubrick.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing The Shining for the first time, and it terrified me.
Yeah.
But now, watching it again and again, now that I know the scares, the red rum,
It's
and
a little easier to get through.
it's easier to get through, and I really appreciate the cinematography and the mood that he sets.
Yeah.
So paranoid and claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson
Incredible.
is brilliant.
One of my favorite lines in that one. I won't do it.
Here's Johnny.
No,
that
no,
one?
Did you say this last week?
It's when he's climbing up the stairs.
Oh,
and he's
yes.
Like, he's like, Wendy, I'm not gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna bash your
Yeah.
brains in. Yeah.
I love
it's so
that.
dark. It is really dark. But yeah, that's a good one. I think
Great
George
choice.
McCann mentioned that one last week.
A couple people brought it up, yeah.
As one of his scariest moments in horror films.
Yes.
And so,
Good job.
yeah, total. And if you watch, what actually made this movie a little bit scarier for me is watching the documentary Room 237.
That made it more interesting for
Yes.
me.
Well, it made it scarier for me just because of the whole layout of the actual Overlook Hotel. 'Cause
Yeah.
It almost, a lot of it just doesn't make any sense.
Which I think is on purpose because it's
Yes.
meant to make you feel disorientated and not really know where you are.
Yeah.
But I love that documentary because I like people who go really deep with
Yes.
their films and start coming up with other theories and things that they believe, and they read so far into it. It's great.
Have you seen it?
Room 237?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it actually for the first time about a month ago,
Okay.
actually. It was really cool, dude.
Well, see, the thing is, like, a lot of people complain, like, oh, there's too many conspiracies, like, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
not all of them
But-
are true.
But
Yeah.
obviously, but, like,
Yeah.
that's kind of the beautiful thing about the film. Like, you don't really know if he meant to do all
Exactly.
these things. So I
Because
think-
that's the thing about Kubrick. People say he's meant to, like, every single thing in his frame is meant to be there.
Yeah.
So there are things that don't make sense in The Shining, and people trying to figure out why.
Yeah.
That is, I love that.
It's incredible.
Good
Have you
pick.
read the book for it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
But I know
Yeah, it's-
Stephen King wasn't
Oh,
happy
no,
with it.
He was not happy. It's actually really funny. I love that they point out in that documentary the color of the bug of the car that was in it. In
Yes.
the book, it's like yellow. In the movie, it's red. Or
And-
vice
It's
versa.
like a
and-
big middle finger to
Yeah,
Stephen
pretty
King,
much.
yeah.
Exactly. And in the movie, there's a shot where the car that's supposed to be in the book is like crushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
That's pretty good. Nice. That's a great one. Obviously, you got
Pretty
another one.
Another one, well, I love Psycho.
There we
Psycho.
go.
So
I'll give you a high
Psycho,
five now. There we go.
yay!
We're back.
Now, would you consider Rear Window a horror film, or is that more
It's
psychological?
more a
suspense?
thriller,
Yeah.
but it does have
That
horror
Horror elements.
elements to it. Yeah, and Psycho is great. And just at South by Southwest, which I know we'll talk about,
now.
they had
Very shortly.
they had a little model of the hotel, the Bates Motel.
Yeah.
And it was set to scale, so you could go in there and go into all the rooms.
That's incredible. You should
Yeah.
have done the scene of the stairs just.
Yeah, wow, falling backwards, which
That-
Hitchcock didn't do.
really?
It was the second
second
assistant
unit?
director. He did that one. He was sick, and then he came back, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I like it, but I like that
That's interesting.
the aspect
It's
of
falling
it."
back.
Yeah.
And when I think of a lot of black and white films, they don't necessarily scare me as much as like some of the more modern horror films do.
Yep.
Just I don't know, maybe it's just because of the time. I wouldn't say dated, but something about them, they were so much different than the horror films are today. But the one thing that does scare me every single time was the skeleton mother.
Oh.
They get
it
you
is
every time.
horrifying.
Yeah.
every
Yeah,
single time.
still
Just the reveal,
now.
the chair spins around.
And the light swinging.
Oh, yeah.
It's the best.
Great twist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a really great one. Shining, obviously Psycho. So what would you say, what scares you the most about horror films? Like, what is it that really terrifies you? Because it seems like you get scared pretty easily.
I do.
Yeah.
And the stupid thing is, I think that once I've seen the movie, it's going to happen to me in real life.
Okay.
So
All right.
anything with demons terrify me.
Yeah.
Ghosts, really scary. Dolls.
Dolls, yeah, I
You're
can
Freaky.
describing pretty much every modern horror movie.
Yeah,
I
everything
know.
out there. Well, like, see, I can't. Dolls are one thing.
Yeah.
But for me, that excites me about horror films.
Oh.
Well, for me, what scares me.
We're sick people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like going home and feeling creeped out.
Yeah.
Basically.
No,
is what it
I
is.
hate that. I
it's-
hate that bit.
It's just I don't know what it is. Like literally the other night, It Follows. Okay, when we
Yes.
saw that, it didn't necessarily scare me. I woke up early in the morning because my mom had woken me up, and she was like, it looked like she was like walking towards me,
Like
And I'm like,
slowly.
Not saying
and
a single
I
word.
thought about
Yeah.
it for a second. I'm like, oh my god, and then she's like, wake up, and I was like, oh god, I don't know, something about that. I just like being scared.
I hate that. So when I go home after a scary movie, I get so terrified because I think it's all going to happen to me. So slasher films and serial killers don't necessarily scare me.
Okay.
It's the ghosts and
Ghosts,
the demons.
kind of the unreal, like the stuff that's not really.
Yeah, because I
real.
have a feeling like it could happen.
Yeah, because we don't know if it's real. Or not.
And if you don't believe in it, maybe
Yeah.
it will happen to you.
But
so you're, like,
you shouldn't be
scared.
ashamed though, because I mean, we all find things different that are scary.
Yeah.
You know, I still think this Signs part from the alien scene from Signs
Signs.
is terrifying, but a lot of people think that's just really dumb.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all perspective. It all
Yeah.
really depends on what you find scary.
But I hate watching a scary movie because I hate that feeling of it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. Oh my god, there it goes.
you just got to be in a certain mood for it.
But I do appreciate a horror movie after I've seen it and
Yeah.
after I've gotten over the scares of being at home alone.
Yeah.
Then I start to appreciate it if it's made really well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, cool. All right, cool. Glad we got to know you a little bit.
That was fun, man. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
sure. I haven't
understand me?
seen any horror movie.
I feel like I'm a wuss.
I'm really
I've
interested.
seen a lot of horror movies.
I'm
Really?
sure because I'm
Okay,
sure
yeah.
you have to. You have to.
I
see
have to
some.
for
Yeah,
work.
yes.
And then, there is a tiny part of me that's like curious about it,
Okay.
but then hates it while I'm there. I'm
Yeah.
the worst
I'm the
person
same
to
thing,
watch.
yeah. Like, every time I'm in the middle of one, if it's a really good one, I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
This isn't fun.
I'm like,
I'm
I want
I'm
this
not
to
having fun
end.
watching this, and then when I
When's
walk
the-
out, I'm like, that's incredible.
When's
I'm
the
so
last
glad,
time
yeah.
you watched a horror film and you actually like closed your eyes?
Oh, every single time.
Every time.
Really?
Every time.
Every
Really?
time
Oh,
I
wow.
hide behind my coat or I pretend to be writing notes if I'm at a press screening and I
Yeah.
don't want to look like a wuss.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just intently writing notes, but secretly I'm writing like, I hate this. Get me out of here.
What about you? When's the last one?
Probably the first Insidious. That
First
was like right
Insidious?
before I became to like really appreciate horror
Oh,
movies.
okay.
But that one was just such the way they did that visually, dude. I just kept looking down
Yeah.
so often during that.
I think
yeah.
the last one was Paranormal Activity,
Mhm.
but it wasn't necessarily cover. It was like looking down. Like
Yeah.
You're like going like this. Right?
I've perfected the art of looking down so that it looks like my head is still
Yeah,
facing
yeah.
the screen, but I'm actually
You're
not
not-
watching.
you're like
You're
you're
not-
kind of
yeah,
just
yeah.
closing your eyes. You're keeping one eye open.
Yeah,
So-
and then of course you always open your eyes right at the moment when
Yeah.
you're not
Oh, yeah.
supposed to, and then you get scared, so
Oh,
you end
that's
up
the best.
seeing it all.
Oh, that's the best.
Ugh.
Well, you just went. You get to do all these really cool
You're an
things. I
important
sometimes
person. You know that?
Busy
I-
and important.
I sometimes hate following you on Twitter and Instagram because
Oh,
I just
sorry.
see all these cool pictures of you all over the place. So you went to Sundance, you went to South by Southwest.
Yes.
Which was your favorite out of the two?
Sundance is probably my favorite because of the movies at Sundance. So
Okay.
Sundance is more independent movies, or all independent movies, and then South by Southwest is
It's like a mix, right?
A mix, yeah. So we saw Furious 7 for the first, the first screening of it, but we also saw some indie films. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a mix. Sundance is my favorite, but both are great for horror films. So
Okay.
both have a strong like midnight screening section
That's really cool.
where you get to see some horror films.
Was Furious 7 scary at all because of James Wan?
No, and I felt
They're not
really
scary
bad
ones, really.
because someone had tweeted me that, and I said, no, it's not suspenseful at all. Meaning, in the terms that you might think James Wan would
Yeah,
do,
absolutely.
Yeah.
James Wan retweeted that And then I felt bad because then people were tweeting me going, so it has no suspense? Like, films should have suspense.
Imagine you're like, it's better than his other crap. Or something like
So
that.
I replied to James Wan and I said, and he's Aussie, so I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant it's not a horror film, it's an action film. And then I said it's insane fun because it is, and he retweeted that. So I was like, phew,
That is
okay,
That guy's so
done.
cool. He favorited one of my tweets like a couple years ago, and it like made my whole year.
I
was
love
like, James Wan
his
favorited a tweet of mine.
Twitter name as
Yeah.
well, Creepy Puppet.
Aren't you guys just the coolest?
Yeah.
They're so cool.
The most
James Wan
excited
story
I get on Twitter is when Ken or Mark Ellis favor my stuff. I don't get James Wan or anybody.
Yeah.
But it definitely doesn't feel like a James Wan movie, but it's not supposed to.
Of course not. No,
It
Which is
fits with the franchise.
It is interesting to see him like I could see like him going horror, and then maybe like a drama or some kind of thriller, not horror, but to straight like action like that. That's interesting.
It is interesting, and he said a few times that he was done with horror, but I hope not because he's great.
Okay, cool. So
I think he's coming back to do Conjuring 2, I believe.
yes, he is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
good,
I think he
good.
got contracted into that. Too,
Conjuring's
another
freaky.
thing.
Yeah.
It is. So you saw It Follows
At Sundance.
at Sundance, and then you saw Unfriended. Were there any others?
No, those were the
Those are
only
the
two that I
Okay.
saw horror-wise.
Okay.
It Follows, I loved. I hated it during watching it because it is so creepy, but it's got such an interesting premise, which I'm sure you all know about,
Yes.
about getting an STD, a sexually transmitted demon
Well, it's
who
weird.
follows you.
It's almost like not a demon because it doesn't really get
They don't say
specific.
what it is.
They don't really
It's just
say
this-
what it is.
But
I
it
mean,
can take any form.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
It can be a person you know, or it can be a freaky tall guy really scared me, and just walking slowly towards you. So I was definitely creeped out during that.
Yeah.
It played at AFI Festival before, so Amy Rose, who I work with at
really?
AMC Independent, she saw it and she said, "You have to see it. It's fantastic."
It is.
So I watched it under my coat, but I loved it because
Don't
it's
laugh at her,
also
Cody.
I really want to see a horror movie with
Really
Alicia now, just to see
scary.
this stuff in action.
Oh, I'm the worst. And I was looking at Amy Rose going, "Tell me when it's over. Tell me when it's over." And she wouldn't. So then I would look back and it would be right at the wrong moments.
Oh.
But I loved how it looked. It was so
it's
Great
beautifully
production,
shot.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the movie.
The shot composition, everything was great.
His
and
panning shots,
Great
like
tracking
just
shots,
like
all
that.
it is very much. I think I texted you this too. It's almost like a love letter to John Carpenter. Like it
is.
very felt like Halloween, especially like the scene where the two sisters are walking and it's fall. There's leaves everywhere. They're just walking together, having a conversation.
I love how it feels kind of retro. You don't know exactly what time it's set in.
Yeah.
We were talking about
We
that.
did
Remember,
because
we
like
couldn't figure out when it was.
because they're in like a really rural area, but then they're driving. Some people are driving like not modern cars, and others driving older cars.
And
Girl
then
in the
there
beginning
was
had a cell phone, but no one else in the movie really had
Yeah.
a cell phone.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
there's the girl that's reading the
That-
shell.
Yeah.
Well, I've never seen that.
I've never
before.
seen that. That seemed like something quite futuristic.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you can't
really
pinpoint when
know.
it's shot. And Micah Monroe, who we saw in The Guest as well.
Oh, yes, yes.
She's one of my favorite actresses at
Yeah.
the moment.
I turned like in the beginning. I was like, "Is that the girl from the gas?" He's like, "Yeah, shut up." Okay.
Yeah.
From the first frame, I was like, oh, that's her.
Oh, that's incredible.
And it just shows you how you don't need a huge budget to
No,
make
no,
these
not
kind
at
of
all.
scary
it was
movies.
Only like a $1.4 million or something like that. I think.
No real special effects. It was
I
just
can't think of a
someone
single,
walking.
No.
Like animated special effects
Just
shot in
makeup
this.
stuff,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
it.
But some of the shots were great, like the one when they're in the hallway and it's going around in
yeah.
circles.
Shot in the whole movie.
Yes.
And each
Yeah.
time it
She gets
spins
closer.
around,
Yeah.
the demon gets closer.
I love
Yeah.
that. I thought that was
Oh.
great. And then
Love
there
that.
was that, and then the pulling of the hair. I
Yeah.
think the whole opening.
That was the only special effect, really,
I
wasn't
think
it?
so. Yeah. I think the whole opening scene too, where the girl comes out and it does the same
That's
spin
the
around.
tracking shot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The little
just goes
tracking
around.
shot.
Yeah.
I thought that was really
That was
brilliant. And the
fantastic.
music's
The tension
incredible.
was fantastic. So that's a movie that I hated watching during, but I really love,
Appreciate
if that
afterwards.
makes sense.
You don't ever want to see it again.
No.
And then so Unfriended.
Unfriended at South by Southwest.
I'm
Now,
nervous about this one.
I
Yes.
liked it. I
Okay,
know that
alright.
some people didn't, but
Okay.
I liked it because it's so inventive.
Okay.
Basically, it all takes place on a computer screen.
The whole movie.
The whole movie takes place on a computer screen. So it's strange because it's like you're the perspective of the girl manipulating the computer screen.
Oh.
So you see her mouse clicking around things,
So it's
and
almost
then
like you're
she
the
goes
demon.
to
You're the-
Skype.
yeah.
No, you're the
One of
you're
the
the
main
one of
characters.
the victims.
You're the one that's
Okay,
messing.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the main girl in
Okay.
it.
Oh, okay.
So you see her clicking around her computer. She goes to Facebook. She goes to Spotify. She goes to Messenger, and then she goes to Skype, and they're having a group Skype conversation. Her and her friends, and this unknown person pops up, and it ends up being a girl who had committed suicide.
Yeah.
and had taken a video. There's video footage of her committing suicide, but she committed suicide because someone posted a video of her drunk and messed up. And then it's about this demon getting revenge.
That's crazy.
That's really
So
interesting.
I thought it was so interesting because for me, it's like a new form of found footage.
Yes. Well, that's the thing that kind of worries me about it. I'm hoping that this doesn't send off a trend. So like first it's going to be first it's just the camera itself, then Skype, and then it's just going to be like Vines.
Yeah.
They're like Vines cut all together.
I
into
know.
one
It's just
movie.
Instagram collages, just going down, just pictures of Instagram.
But that's why found footage and those kind of styles are so effective because they feel real.
Yeah, they do.
So this felt real because she used her computer in the same way that we do.
Yeah.
So, for example, she might be talking to her friends about one thing on Skype and then she'll be messaging her boyfriend something different who's also on Skype.
Okay.
And it was interesting to see the different ways you use different social media.
Okay.
Like you might be one person on Facebook, might be a different person on Twitter, different again when you're on Skype.
I like
So
that.
I liked that idea. I thought that was inventive.
And what I saw from the trailer too, like the footage actually looks kind of raw. It looks like it's actually on
Yeah.
the computer. I think that would
They
make it a lot
did.
more scary. Just like old grainy kind of film instead of like something crystal clear. Maybe.
So apparently they built a house and then they were each in a bedroom.
Wow. That's
And
cool.
then in the middle was the video village where they had all the monitors and director
really
was set
cool,
up.
yeah. That
So
is
they
really
were
interesting.
filming themselves.
That is low budget right there.
All right.
That's
There
how
you go. So I
yeah.
thought that was clever and picked up by Blumhouse, which of course they're the leaders
Yeah,
in
love
the
Blumhouse.
new
We'll talk about them.
indie horrors. Yeah.
All
So
right, cool.
I
Okay.
dug it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more excited now.
Yeah.
I just hope it's just not a gimmick, and I hope it doesn't start Unfriended.
Yeah, I
like
hope
a
not.
trend.
I hope it's just the one movie by itself.
And so, with that, let's transition into talking about indie horror films.
Yes.
Because, I mean, you look at horror films today, like, indie is basically not just horror films, but films in general, film is staying alive. And for me, like, I actually posted on social media the other day, I was like, think of a horror film that doesn't have a sequel, prequel, spin-off, television, like, you can hardly think of anything.
And nothing too recent either.
And-
People will
and-
be
yeah,
like,
yeah, a lot of
Babadook.
people-
Well, that came out last year. You can't
Yeah, a lot
say
of people
that.
were thinking of some more recent stuff, which
Yes.
is okay, but
It
think,
might
like,
still
maybe,
get
like-
a sequel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
the thing. But so it's so hard to think
almost
of.
impossible.
I only came up with a few, and I'm not sure if these ones like Videodrome is one that was never
Yep.
touched.
Cronenberg.
Cronenberg, that's a really great one. Suspiria, that's
Yep.
another great one that no one has really touched. So, like, I'm wondering if It Follows and like the Babadook, and then even though Wolf Creek had a sequel, if like these movies would be the ones that we will stand the test of time without being touched by anything.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's the problem these days is a film does well and people want to make a sequel, a prequel, a remake, a reboot. I would suggest Cabin in the Woods
Yes,
is one that would
Cabin
be
in the
its
Woods is
perfect
that's a good one.
standalone,
It
and
is.
I can't imagine them doing a sequel to it.
I can see them doing.
not.
I can either see them do a prequel,
Yeah.
kind of get into that lore, which it's perfect the way it is. They don't need
Yeah,
to get
I
into
don't
it,
think they
or a TV series. I can see them doing some kind of TV series.
Yes.
But yes, that was such a great surprise.
That's one of my favorite indie horror films because it was such a great surprise.
Yeah.
You didn't know where it was going, and then they have the twist, and it's perfect for horror fans
Yes.
because it makes fun of all the tropes in horror movies while also being a horror movie.
I remember seeing the trailer for this, and it was just like, oh great, this is gonna be another one of those movies in the Cabin in the Woods, and it's like Cabin in the Woods. It's like, oh great, but then once you sit down there, people had to convince me to go see it. And I was like, it looks
Really?
so stupid.
Ah.
Yeah, I thought the trailers looked really dumb, and then I sat down. I'm like, oh. It's just like all the combination of everything.
I thought it looked dumb too, but I heard the buzz around it. I was okay, what is
Okay.
the big deal about this movie? So I saw it 3 times in theaters. By the way.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Saw it with a different group of friends each time, just to see their reactions to it. Because every time they thought it looked so stupid, and
That's
they
what I do
walked
with
out,
Whiplash.
they're like, "What the hell was that? That was insane!" And so I'm like, "Yeah,
That's
Love
a great
Cabin.
one.
Yeah,
Cabin in the Woods.
I've made a few people watch that film
Yeah.
as well.
And-
And a few people like me who are scared of horror films. I'm like, no, it's fine. Because
Yeah.
once it gets to the reveal, then you're along with the ride.
And it's a lot of fun. That
also
opening
still
scene,
scary.
That opening scene is so damn funny.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And that's a film that sat on the shelf for years.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was at what, MGM? Was
Yeah,
that MGM for a while?
and then that all crumbled, so it sat on the shelf. And it's funny because it came out after Thor, but it was actually
Yeah.
before Thor
Yeah.
for Chris
'Cause that was
Hemsworth.
one of
before
his
he even
first roles.
auditioned, I think."
Yeah.
Crazy.
Nice.
It's one of his first.
So that's one thing too. Like obviously indie films, they're very independent. They're not with these big companies or anything like that. But you look at a movie like Paranormal Activity that started off as an indie film, but then gets
Super
picked
indie.
up by Paramount. So would you still qualify that as an indie film?
I would still qualify the first one as an indie
First one,
film,
yeah.
and same with Saw.
Saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Saw, as I say,
Saw.
Saw,
Sorry.
Saw,
I was
as
like,
you guys
Saw.
say. So Saw, the original one, of course, created by Lee Winnell and James Wan
Yes,
from
that's
Australia.
right.
That was a super low budget indie film. They never thought it would go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then you can't blame them for wanting to
Yeah, absolutely.
rake in the cash with all the other movies that came after it.
I would say Paranormal hasn't gotten to the Saw point yet.
It's
until
getting
it's
there.
close.
Well, I mean, the fifth one's called the Ghost Dimension, so I can only imagine where they're gonna go with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Saw's another really great example because for me, like that kind of horror isn't scary. It's like the gore horror. That one's more fun to me. But I think it was so much fun, kind of trying to unravel the mystery and like this
The
killer.
puzzle.
It was almost like a modern, let's say, like Halloween, like where it's like the killer, like it's like a slasher film, but not really.
Yeah.
You know, he's the face. The Jigsaw is the face of that.
The thing that I
franchise.
love about indie films is because you don't have a huge budget. It has to be really good on the story,
Yes.
and often they're really self-contained in one area.
And all the blood, the effects, they look
Oh.
awesome in that movie.
But Paranormal Activity, the first one, terrified me.
I
And
talked about that in the last
Oh yes,
episode,
we
too.
talked
Yeah,
about that one. That is a
as
frequently
for my
talk about it.
scariest moment from a horror film ever, it is that scene where she gets pulled off the bed.
yes. That's
Everyone
the,
brought
yep,
that.
everyone
Everyone brought that up last
That is
week.
terrifying
Yeah.
because it's like you think you're safe under your covers. That like
Yeah.
literally, I had a conversation with my buddy.
You're
the other day.
asleep, it's okay
Well,
if you can't see what's happening.
It
Yeah.
makes it worse for me because my house, it doesn't have any air condition and it is super hot. It's starting to get summer. Summer's coming up, and so I'm on my bed and it's super hot. I want to put a blanket on me to go to sleep because that
You
makes me
can't.
feel protective, and I just it's so conflicting to do. And
Ugh.
so when she gets dragged out of there, it's like we're not safe anymore. Where are we gonna hide?
Exactly. I had a dream a couple of years ago where that happened to me in my dream.
Oh no!
Shut
Oh,
up,
that's
really?
And
terrible.
so I had a dream that I was getting pulled off my bed by my leg and that I landed on the ground and I woke up. But then I woke up and I was in my bed.
You're like,
Oh, if
"Run!"
you woke up on the ground, I'd be
So
like,
that
oh my
really
God.
scared me. But
Wow.
in my dream, when I woke up, I looked up, I was on the ground.
Oh,
And
wow.
it felt very real, but then I woke up and I was in my bed.
Gosh, that is terrifying.
So that really
I
scared
had
me.
the same thing. I didn't have a dream afterwards but like after I saw the movie, I took a nap that day and I woke up feeling very weird, like someone was just hovering over me and I heard creaks because my house is very, very creepy. The other time when we recorded,
Yeah, we were recording a
you
podcast.
You heard stuff just in my closet. It's terrifying.
And I couldn't sleep after seeing the first one. I stayed up literally all night.
Yes.
And I watched what's that horrible Jessica Simpson movie where she was in
many
the
of them.
Dukes of
in the
Hazzard,
in
the
the like
army?
army.
I don't
Yeah.
remember the name of it. What is it talking
She's
about?
in the army,
Yeah.
and that was on TV, so I had to
wow.
watch it to try and make me like
I
not so
sometimes do that
scared.
too. I'll put on like an episode of The Office and just
Yeah.
like
Something
I'll
happy.
just try to forget about it. What about you? You got a horror or indie pick?
An indie pick. Well,
One of your favorites?
well, I was gonna go paranormal just because that's like the super indie. I'll go back to Insidious again because that movie
Yeah.
started out. I want to say the budget wasn't even like $5 million. It was like really small, and that one took off. And I know it's expanding into a franchise now. It doesn't necessarily mean that the second one is bad. We're talking about this last
Yeah,
one. The second
yeah.
one's actually really good.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I love the first Insidious. I know you're not crazy about it, but
The first one?
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It has some cool moments in it, but it does get a little weird and hokey towards the end.
right from the opening credits, man.
Oh,
Like,
the
when it
opening
goes out,
credits is creepy.
there's the
With
credits, and then
Scary.
the old lady, and she's just like,
something about like
Yeah.
old
That
ladies
scared the
creep me
crap
out
out
too.
of me.
Like,
Old
yeah,
ladies,
the woman in
young
black.
girls.
The woman in black kind of creeped
The
me
first
out.
one?
a little
The
bit,
woman in
too.
black
There's that
really
moment
scared
where
me.
it's like 20 minutes of pure silence and he's walking throughout the house. It's
Yeah.
terrifying because nothing happens.
And I have to say, the first found footage movie, The Blair Witch Project,
Yes.
Good one.
really,
Well, actually,
really scared
Cannibal
me.
Holocaust.
Oh,
I'm just
sorry.
kidding. Just
I don't know my horror that well, but
No,
the
but yeah.
first one that I saw
jump started.
was The Blair Witch Project. I saw that in theaters because I'm a bit older than you guys. And I went on a date to see it, and
Hey,
then
now.
I threw up afterwards because I was so scared.
Whoa! On him or something?
No, luckily just in the bushes. But
Oh.
he was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I am terrified.
Wow, that's
Why
incredible.
did you take
I've
me
never
to
heard
see
of
this
that.
I've never
movie?"
heard of throwing up while like too scared to see you throw up. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That also
Oh my
happened to
God.
me after the first Scream, so that tells you
Whoa,
how
really?
much of a wuss I am.
Wow.
Great.
It really scared
Every
me.
time you go to a horror film, I'm just gonna be waiting outside the theater.
Have a trash
I
can
just
ready?
want to see. I was like,
Yeah.
go.
The Exorcist
That's awesome.
style. It's
Yes,
like,
just
"Ugh,
great, just
projectile
great.
vomiting.
Great.
Incredible.
Yeah,
I mean,
so needless to say, I didn't have a second date with that guy, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
that guy is he
It's
got
okay.
he missed out.
Yeah,
No,
he
what
missed
other girl
out.
would go see a horror film with you?
And
You're
then
so
throw up.
scared scared to grow up. That's what every guy needs.
Yeah, it was so attractive. Yeah, I didn't get a kiss goodbye.
That's okay. That's okay. You missed out.
But that's one of the best
That's a
indie films, horror films for sure.
And it's so funny. Like, you talk about like this new generation of people growing up with all these newer horror films, and they see this for the first time now, and they dislike it. Like, I tried showing my brother this movie, who's a freshman, and he was just kind of like sleeping. He's like, when are we going to see The Witch? It's like, you're not supposed to see The Witch. That's the thing. That's the scariest thing about it.
That is the scariest thing about it. Another great indie horror film was, of course, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Absolutely.
Which didn't get made for much money. And that actually kicked off the sort of style of the viral marketing because they convinced everyone that it was completely real.
Yeah.
And that's how they got people to come in and see it in theaters. And because it was so low budget, it looked like it could have been real footage.
Yeah. It's very raw, too.
Very
It's
raw.
very raw. And it's just rough. It's like borderline torture, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
And every time I think about an indie film, an indie horror film, I always think about Texas Chainsaw because it's everything about it is just so creepy. And I think the main character is a little annoying, just a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's got like the classic kills in it, and I didn't think the remake was that bad.
I like the original.
I don't think it was that bad. The first one.
Yeah. It's better than most of the remakes that we get today.
I agree.
But yeah, and then that.
I agree. And then
franchise.
and Wolf Creek.
Yes,
That was an
thank you.
indie horror film. Definitely.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I actually watched this recently, just a couple months ago.
Yeah, you tell me.
And I come to the realization that Australians are the best at doing horror films because this is a torture. Yeah, it's a torture film.
It's a torture. Yeah, it is.
But it's like the first torture film where I actually cared for the characters because it sets them up. They're just like average college students partying and stuff, but they don't do anything bad. They just want to have a good time and have fun. And then just this guy pops up and just is insane. Absolutely insane. So I really appreciated the hell out of that movie.
Exactly. I loved that movie because I hated it while I was watching it, but I loved it afterwards because of that fact that they were just being nice. They were trying to help out. Yeah. And so you didn't want any of them to die, and it actually made it quite emotional.
Yes, it did.
And then in Australia, the guy who plays Mick, John Jarrett, he was known for being on Play School, which was this very kids show. This kids show
awesome.
where he had puppets and he was singing and he was so nice.
Wow.
So a lot of us grew up watching John Jarrett as this almost a father figure. And then he turned in this movie, and you didn't expect him because when he first comes out, he's so nice and charismatic. So it really shocked a lot of people in Australia because suddenly he was this guy, and he was terrifying.
Yeah.
Wow.
That'd be like if the guy from Blue's Clues came out and started a horror movie.
Exactly.
Yeah,
he started killing
I
people.
I think he did. The first guy got fired or something.
Really?
They said he went off to college, but I think he was doing drugs or something. That's incredible.
But I know Quentin Tarantino loved Wolf Creek.
He was in Django on that one.
Yeah,
one
so
scene.
he brought John Jarrett in to be in Django.
To Wolf Creek?
I didn't know.
I
heard it was not so good.
Pity. That's a great one. Another Australian horror film. My favorite last year is The Babadook.
Oh, The Babadook.
The Babadook is so incredible. I could talk about this movie over and over. And it's the same thing with like the Blair Witch Project. I read comments on this. People were like, we didn't get to see enough of The Babadook. Dude, that's not the point of it.
That's not the point.
No, and even I tell people this all the time. It's not the most terrifying film in the world.
No.
Like, I think William Friedkin, the director of Exorcist, saying that it's the scariest movie that he's ever seen is a little bit bit of an overstatement. But just as a film in general, like it's a good movie. You care about the characters. You care about this mom and son relationship.
Yeah,
she's just such a strong character, and it does something. It takes like a source material that's kind of been done before, but almost switches it in a way.
Yeah, it's really clever because I think you could read into it as first you could watch it on its surface layer and go, it's a horror film and it's scary and it's about a monster in a cupboard comes out. But you could go deeper and you could say it's about the demons that we're all fighting inside of us.
Absolutely.
And how if we're not careful, they can overcome us, and then you have to, not to spoil anything at the end, but you have to learn to deal with it in the best way. You might not.
Overcoming your fears and overcoming
exactly.
the
Too,
grief.
Yeah,
Yes,
grief.
It talks a lot about grief.
Yeah, so I thought it was really, really clever the way that it did that, and that made it was still scary.
Yeah,
that also made it
definitely,
easier to take.
The thing that scares me the most in horror films is when you see stuff in the background. And so the scene where she looks out the window and the old lady's sitting there and he's just standing behind her. Oh, that is creepy. That is very, very creepy.
Yeah, that kind of thing where they look and then they see something, they look back and it's gone.
You see like the coat on the wall.
So
and the hat
scary.
And all that.
And when she, again, talking about under the covers, when she was hiding under the covers and then you could hear it above her.
Yeah.
It's really scary.
Yes. So watch watch any Australian horror film. I mean, are there any I don't know too many of them. Those are the select few that I actually know. Are there
Yeah.
any other ones that
No,
stick out?
that seems to be just here and there, but the ones that they do really well.
You can count the first Saw.
You could count Saw.
Yeah, Saw, that's
and
right. I didn't know
Lee
James Wan was Australian.
Yeah, both of them. James
Oh, wow.
Wan,
And
Lee
Lee
Winnell.
Winnell?
Yeah,
Oh,
they're both
incredible.
Aussie.
Okay.
So that was really great. And then there's some older ones. There's a film called Wake in Fright, which isn't a typical horror film, but it is terrifying to
okay.
watch.
Wake
yeah.
in Front?
Wake in Fright.
Okay.
It's hard to find. It's a 70s
Okay.
Aussie film, but it's just one of these movies that's really unsettling, and it's an indie film because it was
Okay.
low budget. It came out during the time when there was tax cuts, so there was a lot of Ozploitation films, they call them.
Okay. I like
Yeah.
that. I'll have to check that one out. I brought up a movie last week. We do a little segment. It's just Netflix recommendations. We talk about some horror films that are on Netflix. One I brought up last week was Housebound. It's a New Zealand horror
Oh,
comedy.
I haven't seen it.
Do you have Netflix or no?
Yes,
You
I have
do?
Netflix.
It's on there right now. It's not scary. Oh, there's
Okay.
one creepy image, but the whole movie, it is a comedy horror, and it's just I thought it was really clever. You should go and check that one out.
Okay, we'll check that out. Is The Guest on Netflix yet?
No, it is not.
Oh, come on. I'm
can't
waiting
wait
for
till it
that
is. I'm gonna
one.
watch that like 5 times a day.
It's
Me
like
too.
it's like a weird horror. It's like
It's like a horror thriller.
borderline horror.
so
yeah.
many movies. in
Yes,
that one.
it's so many into one.
Yeah,
I
it's
remember
really
everyone
clever.
was trying to get on me to see that because I hadn't
Yeah.
seen it for a long
Yeah.
time, and now I'm obsessed with Dan Stevens. Like I see him.
Oh,
I just
Dan
watched The
Stevens.
Cobbler, which is, but he's in.
Oh, he's in it?
He's in it very briefly, and I'm like, I got really excited, but he even couldn't save the movie.
Oh, but he's such a great actor, so I'm
he's
glad he's
incredible.
getting bigger roles. Because
Oh,
after I
beast.
saw him in The Guest, I thought, this guy is a star.
I would date him. I
Would
would.
you?
Right?
He
Those
is-
blue eyes? Yeah.
Yes.
I had a 20-minute interview with him about Walk
Lucky
Among the
girl.
Tombstones, and
Oh,
he
you're
was so
lucky.
nice.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Ah, those blue eyes. You're just
Those
like,
blue eyes. I was
just-
like,
He was
hi.
like he's phoning out all his answers, just like.
Dan, just keep talking.
He's got the English accent. I was like, yeah, keep talking, keep talking.
Awesome. Well, I really hope that a lot of these indie films stay independent and they don't branch off into these franchises. 'Cause I
Yeah.
can see them taking It Follows, distributing it to a wider audience, and then it kind of gaining more sequels. And I just hope it never does that.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope it just stays like a standalone by itself. But I hope that director gets bigger opportunities because
Yes.
he's fantastic. And indie films are definitely the future
Yes,
of
they
horror movies because that's where you can experiment and try new
Yes.
things like Unfriended. It might
Yes.
work, it might not work, but at least they're trying things.
Absolutely. And so we got to get you on here again. And next
For
time,
sure.
next time we'll talk about some classics.
Okay, good.
That'll be the
Classic
next one.
horror.
Yay.
Classic horror.
Good,
movies.
good.
And we'll stay classy. We'll dress nice. We'll drink wine.
Oh,
We'll
that's
do
so
the whole thing. So
Cigars.
we wrap this show up every week with a Netflix recommendation. I did last week with Housebound. Cody, what do you got this week?
I got one that probably no one listening has heard of. If you have heard of it, I'm going to give you a high five. It's called Resolution. I think I've told you about this, or I've told JT about it
Yeah.
to watch it. It's not necessarily terrifying throughout. It's really only scary towards the end.
Okay.
But it's one of the most mind-bending, like cabin in the woods type level.
Oh.
It's
Okay.
super independent.
Okay.
Super duper independent. It fits with this
Resolution.
Resolution.
And it's a horror film too?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's classified as horror. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, check it out.
I
Resolution.
will
Great.
check it out, I
Resolution.
promise.
Great.
You'll check that out, and you'll check out Housebound.
I will. I'll
Housebound.
do both of those.
Okay, sweet. All right, well,
Good
that
show,
pretty much
guys.
wraps it up. That's great.
Yay.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for joining us.
No worries.
Tell them where they can find you.
You can, well, I'm all over the place, so it's probably best to keep
Yes.
up with me on Twitter at Alicia Malone.
Yes, AMCI Profiles.
AMCI
Fandango,
Profiles, Fandango, Schmoes Know,
Schmoes Know.
AMC Rewind, New Zealand TV, Australian TV.
How do you do it?
I don't sleep.
Clone yourself.
Do you have
huh?
any downtime at all?
No.
Okay.
I can't remember the last time I had a day off, but at least I love what I do.
There you go.
That's
That's what matters, and that's what counts. To keep your energy up.
Yes.
You hang out with Scott Manson enough, you're gonna keep your energy
I know.
up.
Come on. Come on.
Cody, where could the good friends out there
You can find me on Twitter at @therealCodyHall. I'm also on the Schmoes Know podcast every week.
Yay.
And you can find me at Cobbster15. If I'm not skipping school, I'll be at the Schmoes Know show as well. So thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to like us on Facebook. Yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
You're on the right way.
Follow
Yeah.
us all on
Like
Twitter.
us on
Subscribe to our iTunes feed. Rate and Alicia, tell them why they should review this podcast.
You should review it because we want to keep this podcast in the charts.
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to
There you
keep
go.
people finding this podcast because it's a nice little hidden gem.
Hey,
little
oh,
indie
hey.
Yes.
indie podcast.
Nice,
So
there you go.
yes, please rate and review this on iTunes and share with your friends.
Yes,
Let them
please.
know.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to just use that
Yeah,
every single time. from
Record
now
that
on.
bit.
Dang.
Every
I'm
episode.
just going to add that in there. All right. And if you guys are listening on the Schmoes Know podcast channel, give it a like. Leave a comment below. Tweet at us and hashtag at HorrorFlix. Have some fun with horror films. And one way.
there's more. Come next week, baby, because it's gonna be a screamer.